California Dream to be consorted for institutional scholarships or grants. And as a requirement for students who are in their senior year, they are required to submit a financial aid application as part of their graduation requirements. In addition to important factors of financial aid, FERPA may fall under that category as well. FERPA stands for Family Education Rights and the Privacy Act. This was enacted due to the fact that many parents expressed a concern about providing sensitive information for financial aid purposes. However, because of FERPA, this ensures that any information shared on their financial aid applications is protected and the student educational records remain private. Here you can see a general financial aid application timeline. Between the months of September and November, students should be completing a college list. This will be needed for their financial aid applications. They should be researching scholarships, preparing any financial aid application documents that they may need, which we'll learn about a little bit later on in the presentation. And this is also when the 10,000 degree scholarship opens on October 1st. So it is open now. In December, students should be focusing on FAFSA and the California Dream Act, which is when the applications are opening this year, and they can also begin creating their college portals. Between the months of January through March, students will be completing any to-do list items that they see on their college portals. They may be selected for verification, and they may be receiving college admission decisions. And in March 3rd, financial aid applications are due. Between the months of March and May, students will be submitting their financial aid applications if they haven't already. They may receive their financial aid offer letter and submit to intent of registration for this college that they are intending to attend. And during the summer, students will be submitting any final documents, accepting financial aid offers, and that's also when they can expect their money to be dispersed. So what types of financial aid are available? As you can see, there's about 3 different types of financial aid that are available to students. Gift aid is money that's awarded to students that does not need to be paid back. Examples of these are the 10,000 degree scholarship, the Pell Grant, and the Cal Grant. There is also work study. This is money that a student can earn through a job on campus. They must work in order to receive the money. And examples of these are a job at the library or the bookstore. And then also loans. Loans are borrowed money that does not need to be paid back. For example, subsidized and unsubsidized loans, Parent Plus loan, and the Dream loan. Students have access to these types of aid by filling out a financial aid application. And we recommend that a student use the gift aid and work study aid before considering loans. And where does financial aid come from? Financial aid comes from the federal government, such as Pell Grants, loans, or work study, and also the state government, such as the Cal Grant, the California Promise Grant, or the Chafee Grant, also from colleges and universities in the forms of institutional grants and institutional scholarships, and miscellaneous sources such as other scholarships, the 10,000 degree scholarship, or maybe some gift aid from family. Difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans is simple. Subsidized loan does not accrue interest while a student is enrolled in school. However, on the other hand, an unsubsidized loan does accrue interest while a student is enrolled in school. So as soon as they take that loan out, it begins accruing interest. Middle class award amounts. This is pertinent to the middle class scholarship. Some students may be eligible for the middle class scholarship, and guidelines for the scholarship include that income and assets must be less than $217,000. The change this year is that the award amount will be based on a student's cost of attendance for the school they're attending. And students selected to receive a middle class scholarship will be notified by CSAC, which usually occurs in July or August. Requirements for the middle class scholarship include that a student must be attending a UC or a CSU. They must be a US citizen or permanent resident or meet the requirements for non-resident tuition exemption. They must maintain satisfactory academic progress, not be in default on a student loan, and must not be incarcerated. A note for this is that students that are enrolled at a UC or CSU whose income exceeds the limits for Cal Grant A or B will automatically be considered for the middle class scholarship. And there will be some more information on the take-home resource about this. Some more information about work study. If a student is offered work study, the student needs to find an on-campus job. The earnings are paid directly to the student, which typically they start receiving money after any fees are due. And a student will earn the amount that's listed on their financial aid offer. Some students may get the opportunity to be permanently hired. And this is a good opportunity for students because they are more flexible for students considering their classes and holiday schedules. And also the hours are capped so that they're able to have enough time for their studies. How does financial aid work? There's a few steps, as you can see. First of all, a student begins by applying to the financial aid application, either the FAFSA or California Dream Act. After that, they will receive an SAI, Student Aid Index, also known as the Estimated Family Contribution. Their application is sent to the schools that they have applied to, which they have entered onto their financial aid application. Those schools will get a cost of attendance for that student, and then their cost of attendance is calculated into their financial aid amounts that they may receive, and then that is calculated into a financial aid award, which is then sent back to the student. These are some needed documents that a student or parents may need when completing a financial aid application. For students, they may need their Social Security number, 2023 W-2 forms, their federal tax return for 2023 if they filed one, a legal permanent resident green card, a list of colleges that they're interested in, and a record of untaxed income such as Social Security benefits or welfare benefits. For parents, they may need their Social Security number, 2023 W-2 forms, the federal income tax return for 2023, their marital status and marriage or divorce date, their birth date, and access to their bank statement information, and also a record of untaxed income such as Social Security benefits or welfare benefits. These documents are needed if they have them, and if not, then they might not need to be entered into the application. This is also going to be a take-home resource. And I'll pass it on to Jamila to cover the next section.
Thank you, Amanda. Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and get started on the dependency and entitlement and competitive awards section. So the new financial aid application completion requirement, also known as AB 469. So this requirement adopts that local education agencies will confirm that all their graduating seniors complete a financial aid application or an opt-out waiver. This requirement began in the 22-23 high school academic year for local agencies. So this was the 2023 high school graduates. And then this requires the commission to develop regulations and standardized forms, and then it allows the student to opt out for any reason, and it ensures that they aren't penalized. And for this opt-out form, schools, they have to use a standardized form. So Cal Grant Awards for students with dependents. So if a student with dependent children under 18 years of age and they provide more than 50% support, they can qualify for an increased access award. So this is for students attending public institutions. With the Cal Grant B Access Award, they can get up to $6,000, and the Cal Grant C Access Award, they can get up to $4,000. And students will indicate if they have a dependent child on the financial aid application. And then there's also a take-home resource for you as well for this. So Cal Grant for CCC students. So in lieu of high school GPA, applicants may submit a CCC GPA at least 2.4 for Cal Grant A or 2.0 for Cal Grant B, or they can reestablish their GPA by completing at least 16 units of credit at a CCC with at least a 2.0 GPA. But students must apply for this no later than September 2nd. And then students who are receiving an award in this program may remain eligible to receive their award after they transfer to a UC or a CSU. But students transferring to a private institution will be considered for a transfer entitlement or a competitive Cal Grant. Okay, so entitlement awards. Eligible current high school seniors and recent high school graduates are entitled to receive their Cal Grant only if their GPA was submitted from their high school. GPAs are submitted by schools starting May of junior year all the way through September, and then schools are mandated by law to submit their current seniors' 10th and 11th grade GPAs by September, but they are only encouraged to submit last year's graduates. So a best practice for counselors, if your student didn't meet the GPA minimum by the start of senior year, it's important to check in with them around high school graduation and resubmit their GPA during the new cycle of submissions. Especially if their GPAs did increase during their senior year. This is really crucial for students to access their entitlement grant in college. So the competitive award. So if students don't meet the Cal Grant eligibility, then they're placed into the competitive award pool, but they're no longer entitled to their money. So when do students fall into the competitive award pool? When students don't meet the minimum GPA or when they don't submit their financial aid application on time, which as a reminder, this is March 3rd, 2025 for this year. And then when the counselor doesn't submit last year's grads GPAs, if the students increase their GPA during their senior year. So the moral of the story is students can only receive their entitlement grant if their GPA is met during high school and the school submits it. So some troubleshooting with the GPA submission. A best practice, ensure that the GPA submitted by the school matches the name that's put on the financial aid application and the web grants for students. So this would be the full legal name of the student. When this doesn't happen, sometimes the Cal Grant doesn't link and that's can go missing and when the troubleshooting really starts. Okay, so dependent versus independent. So to qualify as an independent student, they must either be 24 years old, married and or have children that they support 50%, foster youth or in court ordered legal guardianship, an emancipated minor or homeless or at risk of being homeless. And then this is determined by a homeless liaison or a school counselor. So for dependency overrides, this is for students who can't select independent on the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application, but they have a legitimate claim to independence. And then if a dependency override, it'll roll over from year to year. For FAFSA and CATA, there will now be a conditional independence that students can collect or select, and then this will prompt the financial aid office to request more info. So who might qualify for a dependency override? If students have no parental contact or they don't have court documents, so they're not an emancipated minor, but they're still independent. It's important to note that if students doesn't have explicit proof of independence, it's up to each individual financial aid office to determine dependency status. So what does the student need? A letter of support, communication with financial aid offices at each respective campus, and then persistence. This is a process that it could take some time, so it's important for students to be able to advocate for themselves and be in communication with all the different offices and people that they need to be. And so some common factors to consider when completing a financial aid application. It's important for students to take into consideration if their parents are divorced, undocumented parents, parents who are supporting from another country, students in foster care between the ages of 16 and 18, or if the student was or is experiencing homelessness and or is unaccompanied. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to Heidi to talk about the California Dream Act.
Thank you, Jamila. Yes. And now we're going to cover the California Dream Act. Alrighty, the California Dream Act will open on December 1st, 2024, and then we have a quick link to the application. The priority deadline is March 3rd, 2025, and an important thing to remember when applying for the California Dream Act is that this is only state aid only, so that's also a key factor in difference. For students who are AB 540, including students who are undocumented or those who have a Social Security through DACA, DPS, or U visa, can apply for this California Dream Act. And then another important one is must attend a California college, university, and it also includes community college. And then we have something here that normally it does open on October 1st, and it is due March 2nd, but some of the changes, it is now going to be pushed to March 3rd. And then who is AB 540 eligible? So student must meet one of these requirements. They have to attend 3 cumulative years at a California school or K-12 or community college. Also must have attained a high school diploma or GED or an associate's degree or a minimum of credit requirements to transfer. And then the student must complete an AB 540 eligibility question in that California Dream Act. And then an overview of key amendments. AB 540 allows undocumented students who meet certain residency and education criteria, such as attending a California school for at least 3 years and graduating from a California high school, to pay in-state tuition at a public college and universities in California. AB 2000 is an amendment to AB 540 that specifies students must complete 3 years of high school or coursework equivalent to a 3 full-time year at a California high school or attend a combination of California elementary or secondary school. This doesn't have to be non-sequential, so this clarifies that student attendance requirements for in-state tuition eligibility. And then SB 68 expands eligibility for in-state tuition under AB 540 and AB 2000. It now includes students who attend California adult school or community college and who complete specific milestones like earning a GED and obtaining an associate's degree or meeting a minimum transfer requirements. And then SB 1141 removes the 2-year limit on counting community college attendance towards a required 3 years of California school under AB 540. This change since January 2023, and it makes it easier for students who start their college education at a community college in California to qualify for in-state tuition. And then the California Dreamer Service Incentive Grant is available for Cal Grant B recipients who submit their California Dream Act and can be considered for one of 1,667 services incentive grants, and it's up to 4,500 per year. The eligibility is that they must perform 100 hours per quarter or 100 hours per semester of community or volunteer service work or attend a California public or independent institution. For up to 8 semesters or 12 quarters, as long as they have an active Cal Grant or Cal B award, and must be meeting SAP requirements. And for more details, we have the link here. And then there's also going to be a take-home resource for this as well. Okay. And then confirming your 2025 and 2026 Dream Act enhancements. So the application will open in December and will be due on March 3rd. There's going to be some questions like inclusion of race, ethnicity, and these questions will be optional, but will not impact the student's financial aid eligibility. It's only data obtained to be used for the commission research purposes only. And then AB 540 inclusion, the commission will embed the questions for the determination of non-resident tuition. So the AB 540 will be embedded in the application. And then the parent signature process changes. So the commission has worked on building the parent signature into the original submission, which may eliminate the separate pen creation process. Alrighty. And then how does California mirror FAFSA? So it uses unusual circumstances. It also is going to have a provisional independent status and student gender, race, and ethnicity questions. And the California Dream Act is working to update the terms to align with FAFSA. So like changing EFC to SAI. And how does CATA not mirror FAFSA? Well, it will reduce the amount of questions as the info that will be entering. Will not use contributor role-based experience, and it will not use were both parents killed in line of duty questioned. And questions is used to determine eligibility for a Max Pell Grant, so it doesn't apply to California Dream Act applicants. All right. And then we also have some questions to be aware of. So would you like to opt in and receive text messages from CSAC or important financial aid reminders and updates? And then students are able to opt out at any time. As of today, what is your U visa TPS status? Are you interested in the California Dream Act service incentive? And if the students say yes, then the DSIG will flag the student and there will be targeted outreach by CSAC and college campuses. And then the following questions are mandatory, but prefer not to respond as is a option as well to answer. So it would be student's gender, and then race and ethnicity, and students' primary language at home for improving CSAC outreach. And then we're going to discuss submitting an AB 540 affidavit eligibility. So in the California Dream Act application, that gives the student access to state aid like Cal Grant loans and the DSIG if they are attending a school in California. And the AB 540 affidavit form will be submitted to colleges through the California Dream Act to make sure students is considered for in-state tuition and not considered a non-resident. And the AB 540 affidavit process is integrated with the online California Dream Act application. Students submitting the affidavit only have to submit it once, but they can update it as needed if any changes or corrections are required. If an error is found after submission, students can correct the information and update details to the original ones, and it will be corrected to the schools. It's important to ensure that schools receive the most recent affidavit submission too. And then college admissions staff can access the AB 540 affidavit submission report through web grants, which helps verify eligibility. However, colleges are still responsible for verifying a student's AB 540 eligibility. If a student transfers to a different school, they must re-verify their AB 540 status with a new institution. And additionally, the AB 540 eligibility language will no longer refer the 2-year community college gap since SB 1141 has removed that limitation. And then here is the residency questionnaire for students who are going to be applying to CSU. The school will request this document through the student portal on their to-do list sections. Each campus has its own version, so it's super important for students to make sure they are submitting to all the campuses they're applying. And students will not see an accurate financial aid offer until it's in progress or completed, so it's super important for students to complete this. And then here we just have examples of the application, how it looks. You're going to be clicking on the 25-26 year. And then you're going to be filling out the student, parent, and signature and submission. And then we have here to auto-signed at the end and double click that information. And then we also have the next slide, which will also give you the confirmation page. And then it's revealed after the submission has been completed, and an SAI and California Dream Act number will be available for the students. And we encourage students to save their ID number, which will be needed for verification or other financial aid process. And then the parent electronic signature for the California Dream Act is like, again, it's electronically signed, and applicants during this initial submission process, if there are no corrections needed, the signature does not need to be updated or signed again. So it's only once. And then they have to acknowledge the checkbox. If the parent is present at the time of submission, they can check the checkbox, and then this will trigger the e-signature. If parent is not present, then we are encouraging students to wait until they go home, or they can finish it and submit it later. The parent will receive a link to the California Dream Act, not the parent, the student will receive a link to the California landing page where they can complete the signature at a later time. And then we have a what if scenario. Troubleshooting name change and birthdays. Unfortunately, you can't make any changes after submitting that California Dream Act. So it's super important for students to match their information, what they have. So if they have two last names, one last name, make sure to include that, because they can't make any changes after that. They will have to submit a change request, and will have to be printed and mailed to CSAC in order to have that change. And then we have another what if scenario. If students are changing their documentation status, if a student is in the process of changing their documentation status, for example, being undocumented to having a legal residency, like a green card, they should submit the California Dream Act as soon as possible to ensure they receive financial aid consideration. Once the student has the required documents like the legal permanency resident card, they can submit the CSAC G55 application conversion form, which allows them to switch application from the California Dream Act to FAFSA. The student can submit this form at any time during the academic or financial year. After submission, it's crucial to follow up with the school to confirm they received the updated FAFSA and the student's financial aid offer is revised accordingly. And then what if a student parents are in a different country? A student is still required to provide their income and assets. It's important to students have convert parents' income from their home country to US dollar currency, and this will be entered in their the income section. And when it's not possible or safe to collect information, have students contact their school's financial aid office, and the FAO will inform the students of possible next steps and options. Most time it must be court-ordered documents, not notarized documents. And then safe space and inclusive language. Creating a safe space is essential when discussing sensitive topics like immigration status and financial aid. Body language plays a key role, so if the conversation is sensitive, it's best to have it in a private space, not in a classroom or in a large group setting. If you are working in a classroom or work setting, using non-identifying questions to keep the conversation open and non-assumptive. For example, you can say, are you filling out the FAFSA or the California Dream Act? Instead of about student-specific questions, you can say, do you know which application are you filling out? And then just a reminder that some students may not even be aware that they are or their parents are undocumented. So be mindful of how you phrase questions and provide information. And then in terms of inclusive language, avoid separating FAFSA and California Dream Act students. Instead of saying filling out the FAFSA is super important, say filling out financial aid application is super important. This ensures all students feel included and recognized regardless of their documentation status. And then I'm handing it off to Jamila.
Everyone, I am back. And so we're going to be talking about foster youth and students experiencing homelessness. So just as a refresher, students are considered as independent for financial aid purposes. They only provide personal information for themselves, so the parents' information is not required. And then we're going to go over the Chafee Grant, which is a supplemental application to FAFSA and California Dream Act. And then we're going to go over the Foster Youth Access Grant, and then what types of legal documentation schools will be requesting. Righty, so homeless and unaccompanied youth. So students will select yes if any time after July 1st, 2024, the student is an unaccompanied youth who is homeless or self-supporting and at risk of homelessness. So homeless or at risk of being homeless can be defined as lacking fixed, regular, and adequate housing. This includes living in shelters, parks, public spaces, or they're temporarily living with other people because the student has nowhere else to go. And then unaccompanied can be defined as not living in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. And then youth is under 24 years of age. Okay, so for foster youth, students are going to answer yes. So mark the box if at any time since the student turned age 13, if they were in foster care. This includes even if currently they're not in foster care today due to adoption, reunification with family, or they reach the age majority, which is 18 years of age in California. And then for this, documentation may be required. And then also important to note for Chafee, students must be between 16 to 18 years of age. Okay, so the Chafee grant. So we have at the top provided the link here for the grant and the application for current and former foster youth who were in foster care for at least one day between the ages of 16 and 18 as a dependent or ward of the court and have financial aid need. So this is a separate application in addition to FAFSA and CATA. So it's important for students who qualify to fill this out as well. This opened October 1st, 2024. So it's been open for a little over a month now, and it's going to close in July of 2025. This is also in addition to their Cal Grant, so students can receive up to $5,000 a year for career and technical training or college. So the Foster Youth Access Grant, this became effective in the 2021-2022 fiscal year. So foster youth can now qualify for a new increased access award to help cover the cost of attendance. Age requirements had foster care on or after age 13 and under 26 years of age at the start of the academic year, which is July 1st. And this is available at California public colleges and universities, and the award amount varies based on your enrollment level. So here we have some examples of like award students can get. So with the Cal Grant A regular access award, it's not available, but for the Foster Youth Access Award, students can get up to $6,000. And then with the Cal Grant B Access Award, students would get up to $1,648, and now they can get up to $6,000. And then for Cal Grant C with books and supplies, students would get up to $1,094, and now they can get up to $4,000. Go ahead and pass it on to Lupita to talk about the CSS profile.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Jamila. So we're gonna go ahead and start talking about the CSS profile. So what is it? Essentially, the CSS profile is a additional financial aid application that is gonna be essentially gonna be in addition to either the FAFSA or the California Dream Act. So essentially, the CSS profile is gonna be asked by each of the private schools for institutional aid. Not every school requires this, so it's really important to make a note when you're supporting a student to check on the school's financial aid requirements if they're going to need to submit a CSS profile. Essentially, this is going to be a little bit more of a holistic review of the student's financial aid background and situation, and this will allow the student to receive more institutional aid. The deadline varies by school, so it's really important just to make a note of that. Application has been open October 1st. I think the best practice is meeting with students and making sure that the deadline is written down somewhere important, because in the past we have had students who didn't find out about the CSS profile being a requirement for institutional aid. And unfortunately, with those sensitive timelines, they do miss out on some of the institutional aid. Now, there is a $25 fee for each of the schools, or the first school, and then $16 for every additional school. But there are waivers. So a student, if they qualify for the waiver, they can apply to as many schools through the CSS profile. So why should a student submit a CSS profile? Again, it's going to be only asked by specific schools. So not every student is going to need to submit this, but essentially it's going to be going over just a more in-depth review of what the student's actually going through financially and how is that going to affect them as students. So there might be a little bit more of documentation that needs to be provided. It's a little bit more in-depth. So essentially, they might ask the student about their saving accounts, parents' saving accounts, retirement, health savings accounts, and so on. And then essentially they're going to ask for information for the prior year and the upcoming year as well, kind of like giving an estimate. It does give a chance for students to explain like special circumstances. For example, if parents lost jobs, if they had to relocate, whatever the case may be, there's also a section. Now, let's say the student is going to be filing their FAFSA or California Dream Act as an independent. For the CSS profile, they can also submit a non-custodial parent waiver that will extend parent information from being reported. And similar to the FAFSA and the California Dream Act, the CSS profile is going to let them do that, but the school might require some proof as well. So just following up with each of the school's financial aid offices to see what the requirements might be. Okay, so applying to the CSS profile. If students have not done so already, they need to create a College Board account. If the student registered for the SAT and they use the fee waiver, then they also get the fee waiver up to 8 schools, essentially. But again, there are fee waiver codes available to students if they reach out to their financial aid office for each of the schools that are requiring the CSS, and they meet the parameters of the fee waiver. But essentially, if the students receive the fee waiver, parents live in the US, students use the fee waiver, and they're logging in with the same username and ID that they used when they registered for the SAT, then they automatically get those 8. And it's really important that the students select the correct academic year. So essentially, we're going to be applying for fall 2025, spring 2026. Sometimes the financial aid applications still have the year prior. So just making a note when you're supporting a student to make sure that the correct academic year is being selected. Just like the other financial aid applications, the students have the option of selecting what colleges and universities they want to go ahead and add, and they'll be inputting student and parental information. So just making sure that the student is going to be inputting the correct information across the board. They do check their other financial aids because their CSS profile essentially is in addition to it. So just making sure that everything is consistent throughout. So what happens after the student applies? So once the student applies to financial aid, we want to make sure that they create a web grants account. So essentially, it's a web grants for students, and this is through CSAC, the California Student Aid Commission. So essentially, if the student is filling out their FAFSA account, they have to wait at least a week so that they can go ahead and create their web grants account. It does sync their information, so it's really important that they use the exact legal name that they put on their FAFSA onto the web grants account, and that they're able to use their social security number. So just giving it time for that to get processed. And if the student is applying to the California Dream Act, it automatically creates this account for them, and they can use the same password and username that they used for their CADA because it's through the same CSAC account. So what is a web grants for students? A web grants for students is essentially where the student is going to be able to go and see what they're going to be awarded for the California aid. So essentially, their web grants account can be used for their GPA verification. So it lets them know if their GPA got verified. They're able to view their Cal Grant awards, Chafee, or the middle class scholarship. There are some to-do items. So the student is going to need to confirm whether or not they're going to be attending that school that is already going to be popping up on there. When they submit their financial aid application, they list the schools, and usually the first one is the one that's listed. So just making sure, confirming which school they're going to be going to. And then they have to verify the graduation date in June, like saying like, yes, I will graduate, or I have graduated. And then another important note, if students need to take a leave of absence or put their awards on hold for whatever the reason, this is where they're going to be able to do so. So we only have 4 to 5 years of Cal Grant eligibility. So essentially, if for some reason we need to put this on hold, we want to make sure that students are aware of that. And then this is going to be where they come and hold it. So when they come back, they have financial aid as well. And some of the most common challenges that we see when we're helping students with their web grants account is them not confirming their high school graduation. So it's really important for students to create the account and check to see what the to-do items are. So just making sure that they're confirming their graduation. Sometimes students forget to update their financial aid applications by making a correction. If they forget to list the school, or you know what, like they were not thinking of going to the school, they applied to it later on, and it's not on their financial aid application. If they don't make the correction, they're not able to select it on to their web grants account. So that's something that we see. Sometimes students don't even check their websites or don't create it until it's a little later in the game. And then I think the biggest thing is the password and the security questions. Just making sure that the students write down their California Dream ID or their username and password just to make sure that they're able to log in. I think that goes across the board. And then just making sure that the name is essentially matching. It is a legal name that has to be matched on there. So sometimes students have 2 last names, and on the FAFSA, they only put 1. And then when they're signing up for their web grants account, they're using both last names. It has to be exactly how it is on their applications. So, okay, now that they created their web grants accounts and they've applied to financial aid, what comes after? So some students are going to be verified. So there's the financial aid verification. And essentially what this is the school asking for additional proof or documentations to verify what was reported on their financial aid applications. So not everybody gets verified. Depending if students are going to be filing as an independent, oftentimes they're going to need to provide proof that they are like filing independent for independent status. But depending on whether or not they get selected, it does vary. So how will the student be notified if they got verified? Well, each school that the student applies to, they have to create a portal. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that is, but within that portal, there's going to be to-do items, and it will pop up on there. Sometimes schools do send out emails. So each campus that they apply to is going to give them a school email. And if students don't check that email, it might be missed. So just making sure that they're starting to check their emails. There is a sensitive timeline as well for the verification. There is deadlines for the to-do items. So just making sure that they're checking constantly. So in case they get verified, they have enough time to do so. And essentially what gets verified. So the income that was reported on their tax transcripts or W-2 forms, they will have, depending on the school, they might ask you to fill out a form with your students that verifies household size, and then again, that dependency status form provided by the schools. So best practices is just, again, checking, making sure that the students are checking their portals often, checking their school emails. I like to put a calendar note or like have students put a calendar note every Friday, 15 minutes, check all of your portals, check your web grants account, check your emails just so that you don't miss anything. And then also just making sure that if, let's say, a student sees an email and they only have a week left to submit or 2 weeks left to submit, whatever proof the school is asking, that they contact their financial aid offices and see if they can get an extension if the needed documents are going to take a little bit longer. Sometimes they are going to be flexible because at the end of the day, they also want to prioritize the students. But if it's like 2 days away, it makes it a little hard. So just constantly checking those portals would be the best practice. So what if your student gets verified, and how can they provide that proof of whatever they're reporting on their financial aid applications? Usually the schools are going to ask for the students' parents or guardians' tax transcript. So essentially, it's just a summary of what the students' parents or guardians have already reported when they filed taxes. And it's going to sum up all their financial information and personal info. Now, again, this is going to be free. So parents shouldn't have to pay for the transcripts. And how do they order them? Essentially, students and parents, guardians can order online, mail, or phone. It does take 5 to 10 business days to arrive. So some of the best practices that I implement with my students is, regardless, once I know that they created their web grants, they applied to financial aid, is have them go ahead and retrieve their tax transcript. Because let's say they have to submit it or they have to fax it over, mail it over. It's better being safe than sorry. And that way they don't have to worry about it. They have it just in case that email or to-do item pops up. So if the parent or guardian has a social security number, they're able to create an account through the IRS or this website right here, www.irs.gov/individual/get-transcript. And essentially they're able to view their tax transcripts, download, save, all of that. If the student's parent or guardian does not have a social security number, then they would need to retrieve by mail, so they can go ahead and call. And it's an automated machine so that they're going to be able to provide their information, whether it's an ITIN number, their mailing address that was reported when they filed taxes, and the date of birth that has to match. And then they can select what year they want their transcripts to be sent over. And again, it's going to take 5 to 10 business days. So just very important to have that information. So some challenges with tax return transcripts. I also want to make a note that sometimes students and families feel a little intimidated when they get verified or when they're being asked to submit more proof. So it's totally normal. We want to make sure that we're able to support our students by letting them know that it's at random and it has nothing bad to do. It's just something that has already been reported. So just having those conversations. For the mail option, sometimes the identification information needs to be written exactly how it is in the forms. So some of the challenges we face is on the tax form, they have abbreviated like street on their address. But on the request, they're saying street, like spelling out street fully, and it's not linking up. Or if they change addresses or phone numbers, it won't provide them with the tax transcripts. So it has to be exactly whatever information is on the taxes. Sometimes if parents have 2 last names and they're only putting one, or they only put one in the transcripts, or when they file taxes, they're not going to be able to access it online or over the phone if they're not providing that information. And I think the biggest challenge is getting those transcripts sent to students on time, because they might miss the email or they might miss the to-do item. So again, just might as well just order the transcripts in advance just so that they have them. So like I mentioned, students will need to create a student portal. So essentially every school that the student applies to is going to send them an email, and it's going to let them know like, hey, thank you for applying. This is going to be your student ID or student email, and this is how you log into your portal. Now the portal is going to be where the student is going to be able to view admission status, any to-do items or tasks, and their offer letter. So essentially students need to be checking this frequently, just in case they have any pending to-do items. And then just ensuring that they're able to submit those tasks. So financial aid offer letters. So what is it? So essentially, once a student gets admitted into the school, there's going to be a document that the school will offer or like provide the students that will go over the cost of attendance and any of the financial aid that they're awarding the student, whether it's federal, state, or institutional aid. And essentially students are going to be able to see what amount they're going to need to pay the school or how much money they're going to be receiving back. So essentially, only schools that were listed on the student's financial aid application will be offering this information. So super important that your students are listing all the schools that they're applying to or that they're thinking of applying to, just in case, so that they have enough time to process and send over their financial aid information to the school's financial aid offices. So when do students receive this award letter? Essentially, four-year schools will release the award letter shortly after the student is admitted or accepted. And then the community colleges, depending, sometimes they will send them out around May to June. Last year with the financial aid changes, it took a little bit longer. So it just will vary. But each student should receive a financial aid award letter if they listed it on their financial aid applications. And where can students view this? So depending, sometimes it's going to be on their portal or on their financial aid portal within their portal. So just making sure that they are able to access their student portal and go into their financial aid section. So another thing that we want to make sure students do after they apply to financial aid, create their web grants, and create all their student portals is apply to our 10,000 Degrees Scholarship. So our 10KD scholarship is open since October 1st, and we also are aligning with the FAFSA and California Dream Act deadline. Priority deadline is going to be March 3rd of 2025. Our scholarship has no GPA or test request to apply. We also don't ask for any citizenship or documentation status. And our scholarship is available to all of our students pursuing maybe a career program, CTE, community college, or four-year college or university. We are a need-based organization, so we are going to be seeing their need-based. And then essentially what they need to do is submit their FAFSA or California Dream Act to maximize on their financial aid, and then complete the scholarship application through our 10KD student portal. And they can visit 10,000degrees.org/scholarships, where they will be prompted to the student portal. Some other scholarships. So students should be applying to as many scholarships as they possibly can. So when we're supporting our students with scholarships, we actually have a web page within our 10KD website. And essentially that's going to be for outside scholarships that have been verified. So that's a really good place for students to go. It will let them know when the deadline is, the link, and what the requirements are for each of those scholarships. just suggesting your students stop by their high school's college and career center is also a big one. There's a lot of local and regional scholarships available. So just having them go in and ask. And then each student that is applying to schools should know that each of the schools is going to have scholarships available. So each college is going to have their financial aid office, or even the department that they're applying to can have some scholarships. So depending on the school, they might be awarding the student just solely based on their financial aid application. But oftentimes they do have external scholarships or additional scholarships that they can apply to right after they apply for school. So just checking in with the Office of Financial Aid and checking their websites just to see when the deadlines are. And then another great resource that we have is the Immigrant Rising. It's a great organization, and they have a list of scholarships as well. So heading over to their website would be another tip that we would have for our students. And just a reminder, not just high school students can apply to scholarships. Essentially, college students can also keep applying. Some of the scholarships are renewable, or they have to reapply every year. But there are a lot of different scholarship opportunities for students, regardless of whether they're in high school or in college. And there's no limit. Sometimes students are like, oh, I already applied to 3. They can apply to as many as possible. And then they can also receive. It's not going to impact them in any way in a negative light. We do have quite a bit of resources for y'all, so we can go ahead and get in that. So today was day 1 of the financial aid Train the Trainers. We invite you all to register for tomorrow's Train the Trainers day 2. We'll be focusing a lot on the whole FAFSA application, but essentially we have multiple Train the Trainer sessions. Aside from financial aid, we're going to be talking about how to better support our undocumented students, December 19th. Then we're going to be talking about supporting our foster youth students on March 6th. And we're going to end the Train the Trainer series with supporting our Black and African American youth on May 7th. So if you haven't done so, please make sure to register through 10,000degrees.org/partner/train the trainer so that you're able to join those webinars as well. And then we will be sending you all the recordings and the slide decks for day 1 and day 2 of financial aid once day 2 is complete. We'll be also sending out the handouts for both of the webinars. So essentially, we have a 1-pager of 2023-2024 financial aid app changes, some helpful websites for financial aid information, Pell Grant income ceiling charts, needed documents and financial aid overview that you can provide your students and parents. And that will be both in English and in Spanish. And then, or like in any additional language. And then we also will be providing the 10,000 Degrees scholarship flyer, and then virtual events for our high school students and families. And we'll be sending over links with the FAFSA prototype, the NCAN toolkit, and loan repayment tools. So if you haven't done so, please make sure to check to do the check-in so that you're able to receive that. Alrighty, so just a reminder to complete your post-presentation material request so that you're able to receive all of the resources. And we'll go ahead and open it up to questions. We have another question. Does a CSS profile ask for a parent SSN as well? It does if the parent has it, but if the parent does not have an SSN, then they can just opt out from putting it in. And then just a quick question. Is it required that every school in California fulfill the FAFSA or otherwise do opt-outs? Every high school in California. There is a mandate for high schools to submit or have students submit their FAFSA or California Dream Act, or else do the opt-out forms, but it really depends on each of the school districts. If the school district is implementing it, then we will support with that. But if the school district is not implementing it, then no. We just want to encourage students to apply so they're able to maximize on their free, like entitled financial aid.
Lupita, it looks like we got another question in the chat. What is the equivalent to FSAID, but for CATA? Would it be the PIN?
Yeah, so essentially, yes, for the FSA ID is just creating the account for the student and then the PIN for the parents or guardians. Alrighty, so we'll be staying back if y'all have any additional questions. And if not, then y'all are free to log off. Thank you so much. And just a reminder, tomorrow we're going to be doing the second portion of the Train the Trainers for financial aid. So make sure to register for that.